Hi guys, we're back with another fantastic episode. We're joined with a core group of the One Nation team here in South Australia. So Australia, welcome. This is part of the One Nation team here in South Australia. So yeah, it's going to be great. I might get you guys to introduce yourselves one by one.
Thank you, George. I'm Chantal Thomas from Naranga.
I am Rebecca Hewitt and I'm a member of the Legislative Council.
I'm Robert Roylance, a new member for Hammond.
And I'm Carlos Quaremba, and I'm another member from the Upper House. Missing today, we have David Payton, who had to go to a prior engagement, and we don't have Jason Virgo, whose partner today became an Australian citizen. So, and obviously Corey being over where he is, but it's all good to be here with the Adelaide set.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been exciting. It's obviously been a bit of a whirlwind since you guys did such a smashing job. No one was expecting it. Some people said, oh, get one upper house, two upper house. Next minute, there's 7 of you there. So that's pretty crazy. What's it been like for you, Carlos, having to deal with that so far, the aftermath of everything?
You said before that people were surprised. I actually wasn't surprised at all. I think we were going to do really well. Polling suggested we were going to do really well. The South Australian voter had a gutful and they wanted change, and One Nation will provide that. So it's been a steep learning curve. Today we had some media training, and not because we're going to change, but just to help us get our message out there. But it's been awesome. We've been having fun, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to have fun, but we're going to fight pretty hard for South Australia.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think the most important aspect of media training is learning how the media actually work. So know when they're about to do the old bait or silent journalism, which they do to me all the time. You've got to be careful there. And what's the reaction been like? Just from the community in general, and obviously there was a lot of love on the night. Have you been feeling that moving forward?
Yeah, I think so. It's been pretty positive in the community. I mean, they're obviously waiting for us to, get in and do what we need to do. But we, like we said, we haven't been sworn in yet. A few of the candidates have already resigned from their jobs and are already fielding questions from the community, unpaid, but they're ready to go. But obviously we're still waiting on the proper ceremonies and getting our room, our offices and all the other stuff we got to get, but it's just been a bit of a slow process. So, but yeah, we're eager to get going.
Are you guys excited about doing your speeches, like your maiden speeches and all the first speeches? That will be exciting. Get to stamp your mark.
First. I'm going to pass over to Chantal. I think we'll go around the table.
Here you go. Yeah, you can take this one. Grab that one.
Yeah, I'm very excited to get in there, to be honest. I've already started writing my maiden speech and I kind of have an idea of what I'm going to say. And yeah, I'm going to hold the uni party accountable for what they've currently been doing to our country and to our people. So I'm going to be a strong voice for my electorate and the country as a whole.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped to get started.
Yeah.
I believe that the Labor Party have had a free ride for the last 4 years. There has been no opposition, and I think Labor are a little concerned because I think for the first time they are actually going to get some pushback, and we're going to be saying, please explain. Because there is a lot there that does not pass the pub test. The reason that we got the support that we got is because Labor are so out of touch and people feel like they're not being heard, they're not being listened to, and that is why so many people voted for One Nation. You realise 1 in 4 in the Upper House, 1 in 4 people voted for One Nation. And we're putting Labor on notice. Like, we are coming for you.
And just for people at home, 1 in 4, and for Labor, it's only 1 in 3 that put primary vote for Labor. So then One Nation's not far behind.
Certainly during my campaign, I was told several times, look, you're just going to get a couple of protest votes, so don't get your hopes high. And I thought, okay, I'll just leave it to the voters. And I didn't want to count my chickens before they hatch, but you know what? Here we are, and we're certainly going to give them a run for the money because, like what Rebecca said, people have had enough. They're just struggling, and they want people to get up and speak the truth and just speak from the heart rather than this polished political theatrics.
Well, right now we're seeing in Ireland for the last week there's been a huge, almost like a revolution happening with the people there. About 400,000 reports saying 400,000. Let's just say conservatively 300,000 people are marching in the streets, which is, if that was Australia equivalent, it'd be like 1.4 million Australians on the streets right now. And obviously Ireland are dealing with very similar problems, cost of living crisis, mass immigration issues. Their farmers are being destroyed through this fuel crisis. and there was a call for no confidence in the government. It failed, but the people have had enough. Do you think Australia is getting to that point? Maybe the next, few years we can see something similar happening here in Australia. Obviously, we don't want to see the Irish have deployed the military against their own people, which is very scary to watch.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I just jump in?
Yep.
George, my husband and I are seventh generation wheat farmers from the York Peninsula, and it is very, very concerning that our government is not supporting us. We have bought enough fuel to get us through seeding and some of the spraying, but that we've spent every dollar we made last year to put the crop in. We have no assurances from the government that there's going to be diesel for us to get the crop off, let alone get it to the silos. This is really, really stressful and really concerning for us as farmers. We are paying double the price for urea. Do you realise we used to make urea here in Australia? And now if we can't get urea, the crop won't grow.
Yeah.
And this is just so concerning for primary producers.
Yeah, well, there's, the word on the street is that farming is seen as one of the greatest threats to big government, right? Because farmers represent independence, they represent knowing their lands, they represent sovereignty and not having to rely on, the government, essentially. And you're seeing in Europe, especially in France and Denmark, places like that, where the fuel is being pushed so high in prices, it's causing issues that we're seeing here now. And also they're banning diesel vehicles.
Those protests are going to happen that you've seen overseas. Those protests will happen here.
Yeah, that's what it's looking for if it keeps going this way. What's your take on this, Carlos? You think you're seeing echoes of Ireland in Australia potentially?
I'm just seeing echoes of a lot of unrest around the world. And I think what's happened for so long is that, the public to a degree have put up with a certain level of incompetence in government because everybody was getting a slice of the pie. But now it just seems like they're just literally pissing their future away here. And so people are unhappy, and I've heard so many times where they said that, a vote for One Nation is a protest vote. Well, there's nothing wrong with protesting, right? And so if the vehicle to get your message across is One Nation, we will gladly take that mantle and represent those people because both major parties aren't doing it. And we know for a fact now they're just literally the uni party anyway. There are some good people here and there, but the mechanics of the actual two-party system or those two major parties is the same. And, you've got to remember that while they say One Nation hasn't been in government, that's true. Only two parties have created this disaster, but it's going to take a completely different party to fix it. And that's what the Australian people are seeing, and that's what's happening here. We had just at the recent election. That's what's will happen in Victoria, Farrer, New South Wales, the federal. Across the board now, One Nation is polling as the highest primary vote across the board, right? I don't know what more the two major parties need to see before they wake up, right? But hey, by all means, keep doing what you're doing. We'll keep taking your seats, and eventually we'll turn the country around.
Well, the whole entire premise of a protest vote is essentially it's supposed to be a message to the two parties to wake up and start caring about the people again. But it feels like these two parties, particularly Liberal and Labor Party, they're in unison with this kind of self-demolishing policy around how they treat not only the state but the country. And they seem to think that everything's going fine. What do you think? Do you think Australia's going fine, or do you think it's just they're trying to keep everyone under some weird illusion?
Look, they call us the lucky country, but I would argue we're lucky we haven't stuffed up more than what we have. I don't think Australia has hit its straps yet. I think, and the people now are coming to that conclusion that, both of the parties aren't actually working for the people. And there's a certain level of arrogance and assumption on their behalf that it's only ever going to be them two. South Australia gave them a wake-up call. The Liberal Party, the opposition that the Labor Party want, let's be honest, the only reason they are in opposition is because of Labor Party preferences. And so, that just goes to show it's just a facade. But if you really want to see who the Labor Party are worried about, just look at all the talk about One Nation. We've been copying it left, right and centre. For a party that really doesn't matter and we're only a protest vote, they certainly are talking about us a hell of a lot, So, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like just to add, now more than ever, everyday people, even the younger generation, are more involved in politics than ever before. They are really concerned with everything that's going on, and a lot of them are on the brink. They're on the brink financially, mentally, just every part of their life is being affected by these poor policies that the Uniparty has been pushing ever since the last 15 plus years or longer. Yeah. People have had enough, and that's not just a small statement. They've really had a gutful.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of these policies as well are almost like copy and paste policies that are being put across the entire world, especially in Western civilizations, right? And there's also a question around, okay, or the Labor and Liberal Party, they're the professionals, they're the elite of the elite. But, you know, what have they done for us in the last 20 years besides caring about themselves? That's what it feels like. And I think the idea of the salt of the earth people coming into politics, you know, I saw that speech that this Irish man did on top of a truck. You know, it was a very passionate, Braveheart-like speech, but that's kind of what the people need right now. And I don't think there's anything, sorry guys, I don't think there's anything wrong with salt of the earth people taking back their country and wanting to do something for themselves for once. And even young people, like you just mentioned young people, you know, you guys are quite young. Like, you got very young.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm looking at you as well, don't worry. He's young as well, don't worry. He's getting in there. He's got the South American young genes.
28.
Yeah.
There just seems to be a lot of... the Uni Party just seems so out of touch. Like, it's almost like they have this entitlement, George.
Yeah.
It's like they feel entitled to do it. And, like, clearly the South Australian people wanted Labor in.
Yeah.
But the South Australian people need One Nation in.
Yeah.
Because Labor aren't going to fix this problem. And it just appears to me like you've got, like Carlos's analogy often, you've got Liberal and Labor, all they're doing is rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. One's heading straight full steam for the iceberg, the other moving them to the back of the ship. The Uni Party are doing a managed decline. That's what it feels like. Because why are they cutting us off at the knees, it appears? Like, why don't we have fuel refineries? Why don't we have... we should be the richest country in the world. In the world, like, we've got everything we need, yet we're giving our resources away for next to nothing, yet we're not allowed to use them ourselves. Yeah. And it just makes me really question why. Yeah. Why are they doing this?
Yeah, what do you think it is? Do you think... where do they get this arrogance from, do you think, the Uni Party? What's enabled this arrogance? What's happening there?
I'm not sure. Someone coming across the ferries a few weeks ago described, I guess, the dynamic as a neo-feudalism, where you've got now the lords ruling over the serfs, and that's just what they described. And I thought it was a very good analogy. And I can't understand why they haven't been forward-thinking in securing strategic reserves, building critical infrastructure for worst-case scenarios. Why have they not been doing this? And now we're sort of, you know, there's a conflict overseas, and we're bearing the brunt of that. You imagine us getting involved in an actual direct conflict where, you know, you could have Australia being directly attacked or whatever it might be, and you think we're going to handle that? No, it's...
I'll probably add to that, and I'll pass to you, Chantel. I would say what's happened is there's been a real apathy in the electorate when it comes to voting, right? And like I said, we were doing okay on the surface. It looked like we were doing okay. You know, now that housing is out of reach for a lot of the young generation, we're bringing people into the country that don't like us. You know, I think we would be, you know, you would hear the Prime Minister talk about, you know, social cohesion, but he's doing the complete opposite of that. Everything he's done has made this country so divided. And so to say one thing and do another is exactly what the Labor Party are. And they were just gaslighting us left, right and centre. I think now is the time to actually call it out. I think the big change has been that, like I said, the electorate now has said, right, we're not dealing with this anymore. We've had enough. We're done with the past. We want to change. And One Nation, you know, they say we're an overnight success that's taken 30 years to get to, you know. And I think it's that consistency that Pauline has said all along that now people are like, oh, actually, what she said was right. And now the rubber is hitting the road and we get what we get, right? And so while we have a extremely popular Premier here, really high approval rating, I would argue that, you know, there was another Labor Minister Premier who had a really high approval rating. It didn't work out too good for Victoria, did it?
Yeah.
And I think that is, you know, where we're headed, especially when you look at, you know, the debt per capita is not much different to Victoria, you know? And when the bread and circuses go, like I only just heard last couple of days that, gather round hasn't been secured, what do we got left? What do we have? Debt on top of debt, that's going to take away from hospitals, schools, all those frontline services that require, and kids that aren't even born yet are going to be thinking, what were you thinking and what were you doing voting for this?
Yeah. Just to touch on that as well, because I haven't actually got to say this publicly yet, but South Australia, the Premier is doing something very sneaky. Everything he's done so far, if you look at his policies, is only going to benefit him in the long term. If he wants to be Prime Minister one day, what happens when you become Prime Minister is you get access to these pensions that last for the rest of your life, and you can earn up to $500,000 a year for nothing for the rest of your life. So right now, with this debt that we're seeing, this debt's going up to 50 billion, maybe I'll say even 80 billion it's going to go. That's my projection. He's spending, so it's like the equivalent of buying a new home, and the home's a bit run down, South Australia, but it's got its charm. South Australia has its charm. Yeah. And he's got, I'm going to build a pool. I'm going to build a tennis court. I'm going to put this there. I'm going to put a roller coaster in the corner. I'm going to do all this stuff. So he's spending all the money at once, smashing us into debt, the highest debt we've ever seen in this state's entire history. And eventually, it's going to be your kids and your kids' kids and your kids' kids' kids who are going to have to pay all that debt off. Right now, it feels fun. I love having a roller coaster in the backyard. I love having the swimming pool. I love having the tennis court. But as Carl just said, eventually the fund's going to run out, and the person's going to ask for the money, and we're not going to have the money. So what that means is more austerity and harsher taxes, harsher policies, and you'll see it might take 10 to 20 years for that full effect to come into play, but it will be a disaster. And that's going back to my point. Why is it this selfish for the Premier? Well, the Premier is doing this because he wants to be Prime Minister one day. So short term, he looks like the hero. Short term, he gave us the pool, he gave us the tennis court. Long term, he's the only winner in this situation because he's the only one that will get the pension, and he's the only one, if he becomes Prime Minister, that will get to retire with $500,000 a year every year.
I think, George, one of the biggest issues is we're getting a whole heap of sugar fixes now,
yeah.
Okay? And sugar fixes are great. The only issue is that you end up diabetic.
Yeah.
Okay? And so that's what we've got to be really careful. So we've got to be careful what we wish for, because I used to live in Victoria a very long time ago, and we had all the sporting events and we had all this, and now you look at that state, it is a disaster.
Yeah.
The debt levels are huge, corruption, the public transport system's a joke, hospitals are a joke.
We have to carry it as well.
You had a Premier who had a really high approval rating, and everybody cheered him on and voted him in 3 or 4 times, and now they're going to get what they get.
Yeah.
Okay? And so then what happens is another government comes in, and hopefully it's a one-nation government, and we'll spend the next 4, 8, 12 years repairing it, instead of just doing things in a gradual motion, and paying for things as you go along, and forward-thinking instead of just thinking election to election cycle. There is no forward planning anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a big concern, I think.
Well, just to add to that before I ask Chantel this question, because I think it would actually be a perfect question for her. It's like, back in the day, you get a house, you might do the kitchen up, save up for another year, you might do the bathroom. Yeah. That was like, you do it slowly. No one's saying we don't want a nice house. We all want a nice house with the pool and tennis court, but just do it within your means. That's the message, I guess.
And Josh, can I just add that the successive Labor governments, because we only had the Liberals in for 4 years and they had COVID. So basically this lands on Labor's shoulders. They sold all of the silverware. So the Motor Accident Commission, the Land Duties Tax Department, all these things, the poles and wires, anything that brought in a revenue for this state, they sold off. And so the only way they can now pay for stuff is either to cut spending or to tax us more. And we're at breaking point. Like, how much more do you think you can tax us? It is just incredible. They need to cut spending. They need to generate an income, whether that be a nuclear waste dump or all these things that we're not allowed to talk about. But we need to bring in some sort of an income to this state other than taxing us.
So Chantel, I was talking to Carlos. I've talked to Carlos about this all the time, and it's in our podcast. But I mentioned that, there's always this belief that the system itself, the political system itself, kind of corrupts even the good ones. And you guys will have to face that. You guys will have to be in Parliament House one day. And I've laughed with David Spears. I laugh with other politicians. There's almost like this curse in Parliament House. It almost feels like it's haunted. There's like a sort of weird energy in there. And they say the same thing about federal Parliament, which is interesting. But how are you guys prepared to deal with this system? Because you guys have already felt the system with the mainstream media, and just to be clear, there's good people in the mainstream media and there's bad people in the mainstream media. There's good people in government, there's bad people in government. How are you guys going to address when you come across, the more sinister types?
We're real people.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So, I'm a mum of 3. I've worked in many different job roles. So are these guys. So we're just real people. We know exactly what the people want, what the farmers want. And, cost of living is out of control now. Diesel's at $3.20. Like, it's out of control. So, and also I was out there door knocking for 8 hours a day, talking to real people, and they'd never seen our Member of Parliament out there. They said, wow, this is the first time I've ever had a politician knock on my door. And the thing is, politicians have forgotten. They serve the people, and that's what they need to remember.
So it's kind of like we don't need politicians anymore. We need leaders.
Yeah.
Because it feels like leadership has gone away. Even I was at this in Sydney the other day. And I was going through this book, and there's a photo of King George V in a warplane flying around during the wars. We don't have leaders like that anymore. Do you see Albanese getting into a warplane and flying a jet into a ride? No way. He would never do that. So we've kind of lost touch with that a little bit.
I think our members will lead by example.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think it's very important that we all keep our feet grounded. I think it's really important that we're not going to continue doing our jobs, but I'm sure Chantal isn't going to stop being a mum.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm sure you're not going to go out. You're not going to stop talking to the people and having an open door policy.
Yeah, and that's why I'm fighting for my children's future. No one's doing it anymore, and the Uni Party, they're failing the Australian people. That's why One Nation is doing so well.
So it's almost like you guys want to lead by authenticity, being authentically who you guys are, not being afraid of the system. The system's going to come and tell you, no, you can't be this way. You have to be this way. That's what they'll do. So I guess the message is, can you keep being who you need to be for the people? You said you're a mother. You take care of the community. People are struggling there, and they're freaking out. They have no idea what's going on, and they've been failed. And it's going to take real people now from all parts of South Australia to step in and actually do the job.
I think some of it also adds is that some of the politicians, I can't say all, but most of them are out of touch, like genuinely out of touch. They don't know what it's like to struggle to pay your rent, pay the bills. For many families, when a new bill comes in, like, oh no, now I can't get the car serviced, or I have to delay X, Y, Z, the kids' school fees. All of these things add up, and they don't know that. They're disconnected. So they're out of touch. And when you said there's good and bad in the media, good and bad in Parliament, I think us sticking together and being these genuine individuals, and we have the voice of our electorates, we're going to stick together, we're going to band together and be who we are.
Yeah. That's the most important thing is, a lot of politicians go in there trying to do good and they get sucked into the fancy cars. And you see the Labor Party, they love their parties. What was it, in the UK, and they had their own parties. Everyone's in lockdowns, but they're out having parties and all this stuff. And you're like thinking, what the hell? What is going on here? Why are politicians becoming party animals? Kind of reminds me of the French Revolution. And look what happened there. So it would be nice. It's actually nice to see real Australians who feel the pain of the people actually represent the people for once, instead of these elites who sit there and mock us and make us feel stupid.
And I think for everyday people, don't take for granted that our democracy, because it's here today, you might not have it tomorrow. Get involved. Doesn't matter where you are on that political spectrum, get involved. If you get off the Facebook, get off the Instagram, stop screeching, get involved, be part of your party, because a lot of people take for granted what we've got, what the hundreds of years that built us up and built Australia up. We need to keep that, and we need to use the system that we have in place.
Carlos, just quickly. So, some of the criticisms of always, like the people I see online on One Nation, One Nation, they're not going to be able to hold it together, or they don't have good policies. What do you say when you hear that stuff? Do you think it's ridiculous that they even say that? Because, it's quite clear. A lot of the other major parties are adopting One Nation policies now. So where's this rhetoric come from, you reckon?
I think a lot of the rhetoric is because people don't take the time to actually investigate, look up. I remember during the campaign, we were accused by both parties of not having any policies, right? 2 clicks and you would have been on our Facebook page or on our website, and you would have seen our policies. Then about a week out from the election, we're accused of not having costed policies. So which one is it? Do we not have policies, or do we not have costed policies? Because you can't have both, right? It's just the system, and these 2 parties are part of that system. are struggling to comprehend and grasp that there is an actual change, a fundamental change happening in the political sphere, right? And it's not just the parties that are struggling to compensate that. Part of the public are actually struggling with that because it's actually breaking their paradigm of what they have to do all the time. You know, how many times you've been on a polling booth, you would have seen it, and people would say, well, you know, with our how to vote card, well, what do? You vote. Mm-hmm. You know, like, seriously, if you've got enough time to sit down at a restaurant and read a menu and make an educated decision on what you're going to eat, surely you can do the same for who you're going to vote for, right? But we've been very apathetic, and the two parties have actually played into that and taken away people's necessity to do that, right? So the two-party system has been, we'll give you a fish every day. One Nation wants to teach you how to fish. It's a big difference. Yeah. Right? I want people to be involved in the way the country moves forward, the way the state moves forward, and the time for apathy is over because apathy has got you to where we are. Now you've got to do the opposite. Now you've got to get engaged. You've got to go to branch meetings. You've got to go get involved politically. It's not necessarily just getting on social media and posting stuff. It's actually going, you know what? I'm going to go to a branch and I'm going to let the members, because they will be coming to the branch meetings, I want to let them know what I'm not happy about, and then I want to know what they can do to fix it. But part of that equation is for that person to take ownership of that problem as well, right? So we will provide the vehicle and the tools to help fix the problem, but we're not going to do it for you, right? Because that's no better than what we're replacing, right? So we want people to actually get involved in and taking ownership of their own lives, their communities, their families, their sporting clubs, their schools, engaging, and that's how we're going to change everything.
Yeah. So what are some of the biggest challenges you guys think you're going to face in this journey that you're about to embark on?
I think some of the biggest problems is they're going to underestimate us. So they actually think that the fact that we're everyday people means that we're mugs. And so they're going to underestimate us. And that is why it was such a master move by Pauline to put Corey in there, because Corey is going to steer us around any potholes. Nobody is going to mess with Corey, and he is the leader of One Nation South Australia. And when this all happened, Carlos and I both agreed that if anybody came along that was better than us, we would be more than happy to step down. And so stepping down to number 2 and 3 was a given. Like, we were more than happy to do that because of Corey's expertise. But they are going to test us. They're going to try and divide us. And it's not going to work because we are aware of these pitfalls. We're aware of, like when Pauline said that she was going to be leaving some landmines, it wasn't because we were going to go bang in their face. It was because when they do try to mess with us, we're just going to go off and we're going to become a tighter unit.
Yeah. So it's kind of like the UNX guys need to become a family, essentially. Yeah,
but we're a family connected to the community that, you know, we're going to represent. I mean, if you want to look at, you know, the things that we have to come up against. I mean, you only got to look at what happened in the media this week, this big blow up, where you had, you know, I would say a reporter who, instead of actually doing, you know, and a journalist, instead of doing maybe some proper investigative journalists, went pretty lazy and accused, you know, one of our members of not knowing that she had to come to Parliament. I mean, to that low-level resolution thinking is really damaging, not only to their structure, but it's also just to think that someone would walk around the community door by door with their kids, convincing people to vote for them, and then thinking that they wouldn't know that they had to come to Parliament. I mean, the fact that that even got traction really is a sign of how backwards we're thinking right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, that to me, that was the most ridiculous thing. And then what do? We spend the next 2 or 3 days or a week trying to correct or fix, and, you know, when really what we should be talking about is the fact that we have a generation of kids now that aren't going to be able to afford a home in this state or in this country. Yeah. The fact that, you know, we can't even, you know, we could be running out of diesel.
Yeah.
But we spent days talking about this nonsense, right? So it's that sort of distraction that the media like to push, because they themselves have failed. Also, let's not forget this. They've played a big part in allowing this government to get away with what it does, because they've been bamboozled by all the trinkets and the bread and circuses.
Oh, and they got tax-free. Remember the pandemic?
Well,
they were
how much money? One of
tax-free
the
the whole
questions I want to
pandemic.
know is how much money the government gives them on a regular basis.
Yep.
To do what they do. So
I think the Labor government spent something like $200 million. I'm not sure how they split that across the other, advertisers and all that stuff. But
yeah,
there's been a lot of money.
You only heard Albanese say this week that the $20 million to teach everybody to pump up their tyres and take off their roof racks. He even said the quiet part out loud. This is money to your television station when he was on, I think, Channel 7 or something, and to keep them going. Like, he said the quiet part out loud. He is giving money to the media. He is buying favour. So that's the other thing too. If the media accept that money and don't do their work, then that's lazy. And we're going to hold the media to account. And the one thing that's fantastic, like with your show and social media, they can't control it, and that scares the absolute crap out of them.
Yeah, well, and that's exactly why we're here, because we want to make sure you guys get a fair go. And you guys are the people. At the end of the day, we built this platform by the people for the people. You guys, when you saw this, Robert, when you saw what happened with this radio controversy, what did that make you feel like when you saw something as ridiculous as that?
It's, as Carlos said before, it's just dribble. They're dragging someone through the dirt and trying to throw mud when they could be focusing on the real issues of life.
It's being lazy.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Why waste everybody's time when you could be holding the government, who's been running the country for the last 20 plus years, to account?
Yeah, it's because they're victims. You know that, right? It's because they never want to take responsibility, and they're victims, and it's.
Let's see. What do you think, Chantal?
Yeah, Chantal. Chantal.
I want to hear it from Chantal.
Yeah, Chantal. What was it like seeing that radio clip or hearing about what that person said?
To be honest with you, I knew it was going to come. It was just a matter of time, especially with the media. You always have to be prepared with these things. But I think it was disgraceful in the fact that she was a mother. And then instead of obviously building up the other mother that was working hard out there, door knocking, just ringing me up, she didn't make the effort to make a phone call. Her sources were very incorrect. And instead she tore me down. And, my electorate, they were concerned. They were ringing me every day. And I said, yeah, it's all good. Like, don't worry. So I had to reassure them. And now she's playing the victim card.
Yeah, she's actually copying a lot of abuse online, and I'd say this is one of the big things that's changed. Is the community now, right? I mean,
This has only gone and woken them up more.
Yeah.
People are like, wow, okay, so they're doing it now too. So it's just making people be more One Nation supporters, and it's waking everyone up.
And why
Yeah.
are they doing to us?
Yeah, exactly.
So you're saying it's almost had the opposite effect. It's actually galvanised your community more than ever before, and it's also galvanised you guys as a family.
So the more they hate on One Nation, the more popular you're making us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not, seriously, it's not crazy, but I think this is what I'm saying. The average person now has gone, you know what? 30, what was your percentage? 37, 30?
37.5%.
37.5%, the highest One Nation primary in the whole state. Arguably one of the hardest working candidates, right?
Yeah.
First female to win that seat.
Yeah.
Okay?
Wow.
And no discussion of that, no talk about it. And we know how much the Labor government love to talk DEI and everything.
Diversity,
but
yeah.
we don't care, that Chantal's a female or male.
Yeah.
It's the hard work that I'm interested in. It's the connection with the community. One really interesting thing that I was, when I was listening about your preference flows, is your husband, Daniel, who was there doing that, was saying that 50% roughly of Greens votes, preferences were going to Chantal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's also because I was door knocking. So they're like, wow, she's a real person, you know what I mean? So when people see politicians on the TV, they're just people on TV. Yeah. So when you're at their door talking to them, having a proper conversation, saying, I will fight for you. I'm a mum, I've got 3 girls. They're like, wow, this person's a real person. So, yeah.
Yeah, you kind of actually, if you think about it, for the left, and especially for the wokies, you're kind of their worst enemy. Blonde hair, blue eyes, white Australian, conservative, who cares? Yeah, Christian, who cares about their community? You're like the ultimate kryptonite to them, so they'll be freaking out. That's probably
Look,
why they attacked Chantal so quickly as
Oh,
well,
and
to be honest.
that's what they're going to do. They're going to attack, and they've done that since we've started. They've tried with me, and it hasn't worked out too well for them. I think if Chantal brings even 1/10 of the energy and enthusiasm and charisma and hard work ethic into that chamber, she will run rings around those members, right? And I'm already hearing from some of the Labor people that are getting upset because we're all getting attention. It's like, well, maybe you should have worked harder. You know what I mean? And, like Malinauskas now has a lot of mouths to feed. There's a lot of members there that have been elected that are going to be starving for, attention. And I think it's really important to point out the fact that while we did take a lot of Liberal votes away, we also really did a lot of inroads into the Labor vote.
Yeah.
Okay? Let's be very clear about that. And, one seat in Light, we've turned that into a marginal seat. We only lost that seat by 500 votes.
Yeah.
And that was against a new member who I've been told by insiders that this guy's meant to be the replacement for Malinauskas, right? So that's a pretty big thing to, nearly unseat someone like that. So, and we're just going to keep going about our work, and we'll get there eventually.
Well, that's exactly right. And, for the most popular Premier of all time, I think he had a last time I was checking, it was like minus 2% downswing. So that doesn't, there's something happening. You're definitely bleeding from both Liberal and Labor. And it's quite clear. I talked to a lot of the trades as well. They're not happy. They're getting screwed. A lot of their business is being undercut. And the only people who are really benefiting are these elites. And even the elites now, I talked to a lot of the wealthy families across Australia. They're like, and South Australia in particular, they're like, yeah, George, we're making more money than ever before. But at the same time, what's the point? We might be rich, but the country's going to turn to, down the toilet, as Carl's just said. So what's the point? We get all this money for what? So we have to live in like a South Africa or Rhodesia? Like we don't need this. And it's getting a bit concerning. But there's a saying: the tallest trees catch the most wind, and you guys are definitely be getting quite tall. So watch out. There's a lot of wind coming your way.
Yeah, same. Don't underestimate us as well. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, 100%.
Oh, sorry, I was waiting for your
No,
next question.
I was just like, how are you as colleagues now, right? Because I keep on going about this family thing because it's important. Because the unity, one thing that the Labor have is a strong unity, right? They might have their own little faction battles, but no one will know about it. They're quite good at keeping it secret. The Liberals, on the other hand, I don't know.
It's quite public.
Yeah, everyone knows about their troubles, but they're trying to get some unity. Ashton Hearn's creating something. There's something there potentially, but what do you guys think that you guys have that's special or different to the other parties in South Australia?
I think it's just the authenticity of being a just down-to-earth person. Like, I'll get on the phone and I'll call Carlos or I'll call Jason and say, hey, how's your day been? What have you been up to today? And we'll just sort of touch base with each other and just talk like old mates. Doesn't matter where he's from or what he believes in. It's just we're in the same same spot. Sorry. We're just keeping tabs on each other, keeping each other in check, and hey, let's talk about this, talk about that, and just general day-to-day life. How's everything, and that's what makes it real.
Yeah, I just want to ask you guys all one by one. The best version of who you can be. What does that mean for South Australia? So I'll start with Chantal, then we'll move that way. What's the best version of Chantal, and what does that look like for South Australia as a political leader now?
So obviously people have elected me because I am a strong voice. I love my fishing. So, I'm not just a girly girl. Like, I like to go out there and catch a fish and, cook it up. So I'm just a real person. So that's the biggest thing. And that's why people like me. I'm not this uni student that's come out of uni and I don't know anything about what's happening with the cost of living, net zero, what's our farmers going through. I know all of it. Yeah.
Awesome.
I think, as for me, George, my faith is what makes me who I am, and it is something that I've never compromised on. And as a farmer, we rely on God for the rain, for the sunshine, for the increase. The whole biblical law of sowing and reaping is very real to us. Also, 7 years in local government on councils, I'm very aware of the improvements that are needed. Like, there is so much that can be done to improve local council and to get the cost of rates down. So just everyday stuff, like as a mother, as a business owner, as a member of the community, my knowledge in local council, and as a Christian, I feel that I can represent a majority of South Australians. And it's interesting because what I think makes One Nation so unique, and it was reflected actually in Family First Vote, is that One Nation is a home for the Christian. We're a home for the conservative. We're a home for the working man, the typical Labor working man, and we're a home for the Liberals. So One Nation actually is a home for all South Australians. And I take that as a great weight of responsibility and a great honour. And I just really, really look forward to putting South Australia and South Australians first. And I believe our track record of what we're going to do over the next 4 years is our campaign, because I just don't think anyone's going to do it better than us.
Yeah.
To put it shortly, I still want people to believe at the end of my term, and when it comes on to the future, is there's that ferry operator. There he is, taking us across the river, just getting stuff done, just bringing us across the river of trouble and getting us there. Straightforward, I mean, pun intended, but I will keep my ferry hat in my office, and I just want to be known as that ferry guy who just got off the ferry, walked into Parliament, and he just got stuff done.
Nice.
I think your question is, you know, what's going to be the best version of me and what that looks like. Look, I think I can think of 1,000 things that I could be doing, but right now I think there's only one thing I need to be doing, and that's exactly being here with these guys and being with the party and making sure that we do change politics in this state. We do give people, you know, assurances, but also deliver where we can. And that this is going to be a long grind. We're not going to undo 60 years or 80 years of bad policy that's led us here overnight. I think that level of honesty is required right now to say to people, we're not going to fix things overnight. But what we will do is put a handbrake, or try to put a handbrake on what's going on, create an environment to talk about those difficult issues, such as immigration, such as the cost of living, such as housing. You know, me being a builder, I mean, it's just crazy the cost that is associated, and you see now why so many people are disconnected. They're like, well, I'm never going to own a home. So if there's one thing that I could do is actually make it so that more people in South Australia have a roof over their head. Okay, however that looks, that's one of the things I want to do. Local government reform, we've been on local government, so we've experienced and we know how it's not serving the people. So we want to change that, you know. And we talk about things like the cost of living, but a lot of those things all relate back to the cost of energy, okay? And we have the highest concentrations of renewables anywhere in the world, anywhere in Australia, and we have the most expensive power. I mean, if you can't put two and two together, I don't know what you need. So once again, our policy was coal-fired power station, and we'll keep pushing that. The other big thing we spoke about was removing the voice to Parliament. That is the most divisive form of politics you've ever seen. Assigning rights to a group of people based on their race. And I think that's wrong. I think it should be based on, you know, your necessity. And it's not a handout, it's a hand up. And like I said to you, it's not about giving fish to people, it's about teaching them how to fish. And I think that's one of the things that I think, if we can do that as a group, as One Nation, we'll open the door for more candidates. You know, I've always said 4 years opposition, 8 years running the state. That's not going to change, and that's what we're going to work for. And I'm happy to work with anybody in Parliament that actually wants to be, you know, make things better for South Australians, tangible results. But if you get in the way, like I said, I'll run straight over the top of you.
Yeah.
No ambiguity.
Well, it's good to hear, because we do miss that. I mean, some people call you a bit of an alpha then. You know, the media will try and say, oh, Carlos the bloody alpha, you know, he's going to cause problems.
Love it.
You know, there's the...
disruptor. They call me the disruptor. I call it the disruptor in council.
Yeah. Well,
I'm the disruptor. There needs some
what's...
disrupting being going on, yeah.
Yeah, we need some strength. Like, we're seeing such weakness now in all areas of Australian life. And it's nice to just have a kind of a masculine presence in a way, because when you look at Albanese, you don't think masculinity, you think like geek in the van. I don't know how to describe it. The Premier, he's good. He's got that masculine vibe about him. He does it well, but then when he weighs votes, you know, okay, whatever. But
I don't know. I saw it short of him playing footy.
He wasn't good.
Yeah, I don't know. But, you know, look.
You think you could take him down? Give him a good solid tackle.
Well, you know, maybe we need to, you know, have that bit of a debate and stuff, you know. But it's not necessarily so much about masculinity.
Yeah.
It's just about strength, and that's what I think all these candidates show is a level of strength. I
Yeah.
mean, you have to have a level of strength and belief in yourself to put yourself up as a candidate for One Nation, right? Because you've got to remember when we started, not started the party, but when we took over from, what was a disaster 6 odd months ago, we were only polling at 6%,
Yeah.
right? These guys all jumped on board when we were here,
Yeah.
right? It's not like they were up here and they're like, oh, well, I'll jump on board. And there was plenty of those people, once the polling started going up, they're all coming out on the phone, oh, well, I want to take this seat and I want to take that seat. And I'm like, no, these candidates put their hand up when we were no one. I back them in for that.
Yeah.
Okay? And what they have is heart and tenacity to get things done. Everything else, the parliament side of things, you can be taught. Okay? But you can't teach that. You either got it or you don't.
Yeah.
And these guys have it in spades.
Great. Well, that's really positive to hear. I guess the message now I want to kind of portray to the people is what is the future then for One Nation in this state, and what kind of example do you want to set for the rest of the states? Obviously, we have the Victorian election coming up. We have the federal election coming up. We've got New South Wales. We've got all these things coming up that are quite important. What kind of blueprint can you leave for the rest of the states and even federally? What kind of message could you guys give to the country that needs it so much right now?
I would think start believing in the unbelievable, right? If someone, would have said 4 years ago, One Nation at this election would have 7 sitting members, no one would have believed it. I believed it all along. I didn't get involved to play second fiddle. I don't do things by halves. And I know that when my time is up and I hand over the baton to the younger crowd, because that's another thing we're building up Young Nation, it's to continue on that.
Yeah.
We've built this, keep building on that, getting more people engaged in council. Well, we're going to be running a lot of candidates in local government because I think that's a really important tier of government that needs to be reformed. And we'll just keep chipping away. Because I think if we don't, it's going to be worse than Victoria. And that's what really concerns me.
Another thing, obviously you've already faced the mainstream media. You're going to be facing Parliament soon, the system itself, and eventually you'll have to come across the globalists. They'll come knocking at your door and be like, they'll show you some sweet candy and they'll be like, hey guys, how's that going to be like for you guys having to deal with that? Obviously you've heard of organisations like the World Economic Forum who... these worldwide bureaucrats who want to basically centralise all of Western governments. Are you guys ready to fight those battles as well? Because a lot of people right now, from left and right, want Australia first again. They want leaders who want to put Australia first again. And that's kind of like the Adelaide set was ultimately the first. The Adelaide set, it's in the name, like the Adelaide set. People want to put their city, their state, their country first. Do you guys feel that is an important thing, part of what you guys will provide for the South Australian people?
Yes, I certainly believe it's more with a battle with yourself, making sure that you're disciplined, you're well grounded, and you keep true to yourself the whole way through. You don't become cynical, you don't fall into these traps of thinking that you're now a part of this elite. Being true to yourself from the start to the end is how you can resist a lot of this drama.
Yeah.
Look, George, if it doesn't benefit Australia and South Australians, One Nation will not be touching it. Pauline has made it perfectly clear that we are going to get out of all these three-letter things like the WEF, the WHO, the United Nations. Our sovereignty is critical, and it's also critical that we become self-reliant as a country again. Clearly, as Carlos alluded to, it's going to take time to reverse this. I believe that we do need to have a sovereign wealth fund of some kind. We need to actually make this country rich and prosperous. But the litmus test for every single piece of legislation is going to be, does it benefit South Australians? If it doesn't, it's not in.
And as for Mally, I think, he's all about looks and what looks good and, $40 million on a golf course. But what's hidden beneath the surface is we all have to pay for in the future and our children have to pay for in the future. So we really need to be a strong voice, and now is the time.
Wonderful. And before I let you guys all go, if you could imagine all of Adelaide out there, I like to ask Carl this question all the time, but if you can imagine all of Adelaide, all the people of South Australia sitting in front of you right now, what's one thing you want to say to them before you embark on this journey again? And I'd be keen to see what you guys have to say about that.
I'd just like to thank you for having the confidence to vote for us and to put us into the parliament. And I promise you that we will work extremely hard every single day. We will not compromise, we will not be bought off, and we will always put your best interests first.
I'd like to briefly say, for those who voted for us, thank you for your trust and confidence, and those who were against us and didn't vote for us, that's okay, and we will be earning your trust. Just trust us to do our job.
Yeah, I think I've said this before. I think we want you engaged. The time for being apathetic, the time for just, I voted, so now it's not my problem anymore. That time is over. What makes us better as representatives is engagement by the populace, right? We encourage that. Not always going to get things right, but we're going to learn from our mistakes, and ultimately we want to be heading in the right direction. And that connection with the community, and I've said this to all the guys, don't think that you're going to be locked up in Parliament. We will be there as long as we need to be, but not 1 second longer than we should be. We're going to be spending more time in the community. I said, because the guys, what's it going to be like? Well, it's exactly like campaigning. You're seeking the problems, you're coming up with the solutions, and you're trying to deliver for your community. No different. And it may be different for the two major parties, because they'll come down from their little castles to the commoners and get the vote, and then they'll promise them all these things, and then they'll go back. We're going to stay down here constantly. That's the one thing I can guarantee you.
I just want to say thank you to everyone that's voted for all of us as a whole, for One Nation. We will fight for you. We'll be a stronger voice for all of you and all South Australians. And just know that Pauline Hanson, Corey Bernardi, they are leading the way. They are great leaders for all of us. And I'm so proud to be an Australian.
Well, there you go, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been fantastic. It's been an honour to have you guys, have me here actually. But yeah, thank you for inviting me to your day. And no, it's been, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, it's been great to hear from all of you. And you put your heart on your sleeves, and I love that. And I love the authenticity. I love the courage, because it's going to take a lot of bravery. You guys are about to face into the lion's den of life, and politics is a very dirty game. And I really do believe that you guys will do a good job. And as long as you stick to your true selves, and you don't get swayed by any, I call them evil forces out there, then you guys will be very successful, and you'll definitely make South Australia a fantastic place again.
Thank you.
Thank you, George. I just want to say as well, we are politicians now, all of us, but we are real and we are better than the current politicians in at the moment. Thank you.
There you go, guys.
The firecracker's spoken.